So you probably heard about the whole Wonka experience that happened in Glasgow some time back. Just a really horrifically poorly managed event, and it was just a big nightmare. And like, I don't know, these kinds of stories, there's something weirdly fascinating about them. Just, I don't know what it is. It is just endlessly interesting. And it seems that the video game landscape finally has its own version of the Glasgow Wonka nightmare. Some organization that goes by Pokeverse had an event in the Philippines, and on the surface, this looked like a legitimate event. They had some very prominent Pokemon-related celebrities. They had Veronica Taylor, the original voice of Ash, and they had Jason Page, the singer of the original Pokemon theme song. That's a good lineup. That's legit. These people, I mean, you know, these people getting flown to the Philippines to go to this thing? Okay, this must be a real event, right? But it seems things did not go according to plan, and if you want the full story, I'm going to put a link to a Twitter thread in the description of this video, and that'll take you through the whole entire experience, all the details and pictures and stuff. Right now, I'm just going to kind of summarize, hit the the key points. Well, right off the bat, first red flag. This event was sponsored primarily by two companies. One seems to just sell, like, Chinese zodiac knickknacks, and the other is an NFT company. There you go. That tells you everything you need to know. You'll get people trying to convince you of the merits of, like, NFTs and, of course, like, AI and stuff. And yet, why is it they always seem to be associated with, like, the worst of everything? Anyway, I don't want to get into that right now. So apparently for this event, everything was poorly managed. Just like basically everything. Logistically, technically, everything was handled poorly. All of the ticketing was just a nightmare. It was poorly communicated. It was poorly handled. No one seemed to know what was going on. Prices were all over the place. The event was like substantially more expensive than any other similar event, even in the area. At some point, they just like ran out of wristbands. Just like nobody understood why. On the first day, they had like an opening like ribbon cutting ceremony that was literally hours late. People just like sitting around for hours for this thing. And then when people finally get inside, it's just this like huge, I mean, it's the Wonka thing. There's just like barely anything there. It's this huge barren space with just like little tiny tidbits here and there. There's like a little tiny chunk that was just like somebody's private collection of like Pokemon stuff. And there's a thing called the starter wall, which is literally just like 3 podiums with pictures and stuffies of like some starter Pokemon. I guess you're supposed to just take pictures with it or something. And then of course a table for that company to sell Chinese zodiac knickknacks. So it's just like almost nothing to do or like look at all. And there were supposed to be like events, like activities. There was supposed to be like a baking activity. I think you would assume that it was some kind of like fun Pokemon baking thing, but it ended up just being like an advertisement for a food service company or something. And then there were supposed to be live sketching classes that ended up just being a guy taking commissions. Like just an artist just taking commissions to make art. So like basically nothing was as advertised, and there was almost nothing fun to do. It seems that at some point there was one art class that did end up being real. They were inviting people to come and draw, but it was only for like little kids, and those little kids had to have all of their own supplies. They had to bring their own iPad and stylus. That was required. So that didn't really work out either. The artist alley was like substantially smaller than advertised on the map. Like, and even in the Twitter thread, you'll see like the comparisons between the map and the actual show floor is completely ridiculous. There's even like funny little things. There's like this one area where there are paintings for sale on one side of this really big room. And if you want to check the prices, you have to go walk over to the desk on like the other side of the room. Just like awkwardly walking back and forth. And much less funny, apparently all of the artists associated with this event were humongously mistreated and misled as far as like what the event would be and how they would be handled. Like they're understandably very upset about it. The list goes on. Day 2, about a half hour before opening, they told all of the merchants, all the booths, that they would be opening an hour late. Just right before opening. I don't know, we're going to be late. Did someone sleep in or something? I don't know, but that was just like lost business that these people paid for. Oh well. And then they also opened late again on day 3. I don't know how poorly managed an event has to be to open late basically every single day. I cannot even understand that. Let's see, what else? Apparently there was like a room of like inflatable games, you know, which again is another one of those things that just kind of sounds fun on paper. Oh, what, like bouncy houses or something? But like, nah, it was just like some really cheap little blow up carnival style throw it kind of games. And apparently there were so many of like the engines, the air pumps in the room that it just sounded like a room full of jets. It was just like super loud. There was like no really well established or in any way private resting area, which was a particular problem for cosplayers. They had cosplay contests at this event, and yet no one really had a good place to like change or put down their stuff. So they kind of just like grabbed a place in the middle and we're just like trying to use that. But then apparently there were camera people that were videographers hired for the event. And for whatever reason, that's the funny thing about these kinds of events. The weirdness, it just stacks up. It just stacks and stacks, and it becomes this like gravitational pull of weirdness where even people who should have been doing their job well, it's almost like they just materialize. You're throwing a bad event and suddenly everyone is doing a bad job. It's just like, I just can't even understand it. Apparently these videographers were super pushy, just like getting all up in everyone's faces. They're hanging around the cosplayers, but where the cosplayers are trying to like rest and hang out and get dressed, and they're just like getting right in their faces, being super duper pushy. And then, you know, there were some things that did go more or less according to plan. You know, Veronica Taylor, like they were there, you know, and like she had signings, and that's cool. But apparently no employees were there to help Veronica with anything, and she was like having to communicate stuff to con-goers, and like this person who made this thread apparently just became an employee at one point because they just had to like sit around helping give out important info because no one was there to help Veronica. And then at some point she's doing a panel and one of the employees like makes her daughter, who's in the audience, go up on stage, and like forcing people to go up on stage is one of those like really uncomfortable things you should never do. I've seen it happen in person, and it's never fun, and it's always uncomfortable, and it sounds like it was uncomfortable for Veronica Taylor's daughter. And then at some point, they brought in a whole bunch of Make-A-Wish kids, like terminally ill, immunocompromised Make-A-Wish kids, and crammed them all together up on stage in a room with like a ton of people, and made them introduce themselves one by one, and there were cameras all over the place. They were live streaming, and it was just this super duper uncomfortable and very unwise thing. And then the person who made this thread won a contest to sing a song with Jason Page, which is really cool, but they kept being like, can we practice? Is there like any way to kind of like practice this and kind of just establish what we're doing? And that did not happen, and this person ended up having to, you know, they ended up singing, and it was kind of cool, but then, like, the event organizers kept, like, asking them to keep singing, and kind of, like, turned them into, like, the entertainment to, like, transition between things, and they just kept asking them to go back up on stage, and they promised them that they weren't going to take pictures of them because they said, I'm going to do this, but I don't want you to take pictures of me and put it online. But they did it anyway. They're taking all the pictures in the world. They just completely lied, completely ignored them. So there's all that. It's a very poorly run event, clearly. But it's like I said, the weirdness, it becomes like it has its own gravitational pull where even things that should not have gone wrong start to go wrong. And I have saved the best for last. I don't want to say the best. I certainly don't want to encourage this kind of behavior. That's the problem with this kind of, I don't even know what to call this kind of thing. It's, memesters, you know, people. Sometimes they'll take a joke too far. And you don't want to encourage it, but when it's weird, you also can't help but talk about it. The Ravioli Man. Do I have your attention? If you've not heard this whole story yet, there was someone there who we now refer to as the Ravioli Man, and it is kind of as weird as you would expect it to be, but at the same time, it's not. Because this really... Okay. There was a guy, and he apparently had a jar of, like, ravioli in his pocket, and he was eating out of it with his fingers. There are pictures in the thread. Sauce smeared on his shirt. The word ravioli written on his shirt. See, if he wasn't eating the ravioli, see, this was almost funny. That's the thing. You can see it. I could see it. Show up at a con, any con, even if it's just some random Pokemon convention in the Philippines, you've got a shirt that says ravioli. And that's funny. I would do that. That's all right. But you start like sloppily eating it and getting it on your shirt. It's less funny. And this is an event that is full of children. They're all over the place. Children of all ages. Apparently this guy stank. Just stank to high heaven. And people were complaining about him. And again, that's the thing. If anybody is doing their job at this event, anybody at all, they're going to ask this person to go home. They're going to ask this person to leave. That's what any reasonable person would do. But with an event like this weird gravitational pull, nobody is making good decisions. Nobody. There's just nobody around with any sense. Except for, like, con-goers who are, like, not supposed to be put in situations where they have to be managing this event. So apparently, security, or whatever resembled security that they had, was not making him leave. And until he pulled out a sponge and started rubbing it, presumably rubbing sauce on some of the booths. And it was at this point that they finally made him leave. And then they let him back in later. Let him back in later. And that's the thing. See, again, it's funny. I'm kind of laughing. But at the same time, any event without security that's going to take their job seriously is so not okay. I can't even properly hammer home how not okay that is. It's really, really, really important to have security acting seriously, and they did not. And so that right there, you know that, like, this was not a safe event. Ravioli Man was proof of that. So that's basically it. There's more details in there, and it's laid out like it's a very entertaining kind of ongoing story. Go check out the thread, pictures and everything. Unfortunately, I don't know if this event was documented well enough for us to get an in-depth documentary on it on Netflix. You know, maybe later this year. Probably not. We might just have to settle for this thread, but it's still a very fascinating experience. And I really just, it's so hard to run an event, you know, and I go to something like PAX and it's so big and I can't even fathom how they manage that. There's so many moving parts. And something like this, it really just goes to show, like, that is magic. That is professionalism right there. Events are hard to run. A few times, I ran an event, Arlapalooza. Shout, scream at the screen right now if you remember Arlapalooza. I would love to bring it back someday. I don't know if or when, but I would love to. But, like, even that's decently hard. This was small. Literally just like a few dozen people in a room playing Switch. And even that was, like, a lot of work. So I guess I can see how something like this could go wrong. If you have someone whose heart isn't in the right place and they're not ready to actually, like, put in the work, it's not gonna go well. This will probably not be the last disastrous event that we get to experience secondhand from the safety of our homes. And I can just hope that I never run into the Ravioli Man at PAX.